I've got a number of items on consent. Do we have some cards? We have cards on item, first of all. Easier to do this. I want to hear items 1 and 3, and the balance of the agenda can go in consent unless there are cards. We have cards from Mr. Previn. Mr. Spindler, I'm going to call you up first. Spindler, not here? Okay, we'll take his name off. I've called him, he's not here, so we'll take his name off. I'm not going to call him again. Okay, Mr. Previn.
And Mr. Chair, would you like 3 minutes on?
He's got 2 minutes and then 1 minute for general public comment. So go with his 2 minutes. I'm going to do general public comment at the end.
Okay, thank you and good morning. It's Eric Previn from CD2. I live in Studio City. I'm on the Neighborhood Council in Studio City, but I'm speaking on behalf of myself, of course. And I'd like to say welcome to the chief. I saw that he's on the agenda today, the new chief, Michael Moore, Noe. And this is a $350,000 contract, obviously, but, you know, that will go up. And welcome aboard. It's a big job. You know, the thing that I said to outgoing Charlie Beck, I'd just say to him as well, which is the big number that was curiously omitted from the LA Times this morning is the $40 million over the last, you know, possible decade of retaliation, harassment, and discrimination lawsuits, which are kind of an internal thing that I know a clean, good new chief, not that there was anything dirty or unclean about Chief Beck, is going to take great effort to make better, to reduce the sense that LAPD officers would ever consider suing their own group because everything's going to be going on the up and up, and I appreciate it. Also nice to see the Police Permit Review Board is bringing in a guy who works at the Roosevelt Hotel to be a member. I like that we're reaching out. That's Mr. Maruf Islam. Item number 13 is a donation. It's a donation for $45,000 to work on the dispute resolution programs, which, you know, is a great thing. We obviously like to minimize conflict wherever we can. I just have a concern about some of the donations and the anonymity of where they come from. There's another one that caught my attention that was about a particular kind of Force Investigation Division training, which obviously, watch what you get for free. We want good and the right training that gives the public a sense that we know what we're training for. In any case, we got about $6 million in a 1-year period I looked at in donations, which I thought was high, you know, because it gives it sort of like a tip, which I think is not something that we want. You know, the Sprint matter where we got $800,000 in free radios was one.
Okay, thank you. You can go ahead and start as 1 minute for general public comment.
Okay, thanks, sir. For general public comment, I would just like to ask up here in public safety, you guys have been doing a job up here. 8502 is back on the floor. That's the ordinance that makes it so you can't really park anywhere near where there's a facility that you might use. These are for folks who are unsheltered, trying to seek refuge, often women, families, veterans, all sorts of people who have come to sleeping in the car. It's not a choice, obviously. Nobody really wants to sleep in their car if they have a better opportunity. So with 8502, I would just ask if there's a way for you to build a consensus to relax the attack on the folks with citations and find a way to advance the Safe Parking LA program. Now, I think we got a $1.2 million in the Alasa budget for that this year, but we've only spent $100,000, and I think Sheila Kuehl got 10 spots over on Tahunga and 10 over on Melrose, but that's 20 spots. We've got 16,000 people in 6,500 cars every single night in LA. So if we could just make it clean and safe, put up a security guard and some porta potties, boy, that would help. Thanks.
Thank you very much. All right, we've got Armando Herman, come on up. You know all the rules. I'm not going to repeat them all. You got to shut your light off. If you don't shut your light off, you're going to be asked to leave the committee meeting. Thank you very much. You can keep the camera on, just not the light.
I'll turn it off, sir.
Start his time.
I don't know how to turn it on.
Please, yeah.
I don't know how to turn it on. Turn it off, sir. Thank you for that advice. So, I and my little service dog are here to speak on item 4. M&M, Mr. Moore, the new chief of police, technical corrections, governor's office, emergency services, victims of crime act grant. Well, I'm a victim of a crime, and what's that crime? See, the crime is I've been threatened, I've been retaliated, and I've been a victim of a crime. And it's really appalling that people like me that sleep in their cars, as the first speaker, Mr. Eric Perrin, pointed out, as we're being harassed. I've been homeless since 2008. Chief Charlie Beck has done nothing to help me find housing. Fuck affordable housing. Fuck all your HH housing. Fuck all your Section 8 housing. And fuck you for fucking America up.
Okay, so you're not speaking on the agenda items. Go ahead and start as 1 minute for general public comment.
As you see, intimidation, retaliation by the dibble dwarf, Michelle.
You're not speaking under purview of this committee.
I'm talking about crimes against me.
Keep it under.
Safeguarding me from the crimes under 42 U.S.C. 1983, my First Amendment to protect myself under the civil rights. Who am I? You like to retaliate? Tell Mr. Moore that. Tell Mr. T-Fank that. You keep fucking with people who are sick. I've been sick. I take medication like you, Englander, and you still fuck with me by intimidation and retaliation. It needs to stop. Stop fucking with people and their mental health. 42 U.S.C. 12101 ETSEQ, in addition to 14141 federal law. You keep fucking with Americans, and I'm an American and not a wetback. I am security. I am ICE. Fuck the wetbacks. Fuck that fat bitch Monica, and fuck that stupid asshole.
Okay, so your time is up. Thank you very much.
White nigger. 1 minute, 1 second. Thank you, asshole.
Thank you. All right, Jason Nam. Okay, you're disrupting this meeting. Sergeants, please escort him out. He knows all the rules. No, sorry. You're continuing to disrupt this meeting. Sergeants, please escort him out.
That's retaliation, nigger.
He's continuing to disrupt this meeting. You're going to continue to disrupt this meeting, I'm going to ban you from the next one. You're banned from the next meeting. You will not come to this next committee meeting. Sergeants, if he comes to the next committee meeting, he's not allowed in this room. Thank you.
Power money, fucking Jew, and you put them on a Christmas tree, you fucking Jew.
Hello, sir. I'm actually here for number 2, Mr. Islam, so if I can speak after, please.
He's continuing to disrupt this meeting even though he's out in the hall, so he is banned from the next meeting.
Hi, I was wondering if I could speak during topic 2 for Mr. Maroof Islam.
Yes.
So if I can...
Go ahead, yes.
I'll speak right now?
Yes.
Can I speak when his agenda comes up?
We're taking it up now.
Now? Okay. Please rethink the reappointment of Mr. Islam for the review panel. Him and his wife started the Koreatown separation movement, and I create a lot of chaos and distrust in those two individuals. And they knew about this incident since early 2017, but they did not share it with the other community board members, which made it very unfair to the other people in the community. And we just asked someone that is more trustworthy and someone our community can trust, because for this panel, we need someone really trustworthy from our community. So we really ask you to rethink his appointment, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being here this morning.
No problem.
Appreciate it. Okay, and our final speaker, Joseph. Oh, I'm sorry, Carolyn. Sim. We have another speaker after that. Joseph, if you're here as well? Yala? You can come on up.
We have a couple other folks who are going to speak, but could I use their time just to...
No, you can't. You can't use other people's time.
Okay,
And
so
I'm going to start. I will restart.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll restart
Thank
your
you.
clock. No problem. And then also, Joseph, you're the last one on the queue to speak.
Okay.
For this meeting. Okay.
Hi, my name is Caroline Sim. I'm here on behalf of the Wilshire Center Koreatown Neighborhood Council area, and I'm here on item number 2. Yesterday, we submitted a petition with 100 signatures and a letter outlining the issues that we have with the reappointment of Maroof Islam for the LAPD Permit Review Panel. Being a commissioner for the City of LA, especially an LAPD commission, requires a high level of integrity, transparency, and representation for the entire community, not just one specific population. Recently, the city spent over $100,000 to implement a subdivision of a neighborhood council in our community, and it was at the leadership of Maroof and his wife. And we have a lot of proof where However, he disrupted the peace in the election process. He was also electioneering within 100 feet of the polling site. And he's also, we just have so much proof validating the lack of integrity and transparency within this community. And the Code of Ethics for the City of LA requires a high level.
If you could just finish your thought.
Yeah, and just even the city's Code of Ethics is very high in that even the appearance of a lack of integrity or ethics is of concern to the city. And so that's why we are opposing the reappointment.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being here this morning. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. My name is Joseph Vigela on behalf of CHIRLA, the Coalition for Human Immigrant Rights. Speaking on behalf of Angelica Salas, we are here in support of item number 1, in support of the nomination and confirmation of Los Angeles Police Department by Chief Michael Moore. We believe that he's the right person to lead the department in regards to what is needed. In our perception, we need a chief that, 1, is transparent, 2, has a bold leadership in regards to make sure that we build transparency, but then most importantly, trust between immigrant communities and those who are communities of color in regards to what we experience at this point. We believe that his appointment will bring progress to the department, the progress that Chief Beck has led in the past, and we're happy to work, and we look forward to working with him in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being here this morning. Okay, that concludes all the folks that were on the speaker list. We're going to go ahead and close public comment and general public comment for this meeting. And we'll go ahead and take item 1, the appointment of Assistant Chief Michael Moore as the Chief of Police. We are now joined by Councilmember David Rue. Before we move forward, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reopen and reconsider all the consent items. So we'll go ahead and, without objection, that'll be the order. And then we'll take all those consent items up again, so that Mr. Rue's here, so we can show him voting on those items as well. We'll go ahead and, without objection, we'll approve those items. Okay? Great. Thanks. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, just for the record, that is all items except for items number 1 and 3.
Correct. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. With that, Chief, good morning.
Good morning.
So how I'm going to conduct this is, if you all will indulge me, I'd like to afford the Chief to give some opening comments and remarks, maybe some of career highlights and his vision as being Chief. And then open it up to a dialogue and some questions. But I will say before we do that, as part of the selection panel and sitting in on the interviews with the mayor, and having been through this process once before, and then also studying this process and what's happened over decades here in the city, by far I would say this was one of the most well done, transparent, open selection processes that I've ever seen, witnessed, or even read about. And not just with the chief, but the police commission, the council, the candidates that were out there in the community. And it was pretty remarkable to just even ride shotgun in that and watch this process be so public, if you will. And so with that, Chief, good morning.
Good morning. And for the record, Michael Moore, Assistant Chief with the Los Angeles Police Department, and it is my honor to be here before you, the Public Safety Committee. Councilman Englander, I echo your remarks relative to this process. A great deal of gratitude to the Commission, including the Executive Director, Mr. Richard Tiefenk, who's in the audience here today, for the thoughtful manner in which they assembled this process, the research they did in prior selection efforts, the outreach and engagement to understand from Angelenos of all walks, of all communities, what the attributes, qualities, qualifications would be that Los Angeles saw was necessary for the next chief to be successful leading this organization forward. Engaging this process was one of the most intensive experiences of my life. And not just with the commissioners themselves, but in preparation for my eventual series of interviews with the mayor, including one with the panel, yourself and Councilwoman Martinez. It was, and Council President Wesson, It was both a humbling experience, but also a tremendous opportunity to interchange and hear what were the perceptions of Los Angeles, what were the perceptions of LAPD today, and what the needs were for the chief to be successful going forward leading this organization. In addition to that, my time in the communities amongst various parts of Los Angeles have been well spent in this last 6 months, also listening and hearing, cataloging, while I bring, as you mentioned, my background, some 36 plus years of experience and many portions and communities of the city, as well as many portions and aspects of department operations. That sense of renewal was very much evident in my mind of reminding myself of where we were, but also taking stock of what we've accomplished and what was yet to be done. And because truly, we're never done in the safety and the pursuit of safety here in Los Angeles and the pursuit of this department being a world premier organization. Over the course of many interviews with the mayor and hours spent with him, again, I was humbled some 3 weeks ago when he called and expressed his support and that his intention to appoint me. I recognize that Chief of Police for San Francisco, Bill Scott, Deputy Chief Bobby Arcos from Central Bureau, two men that I have known for decades. I consider not just colleagues, but friends. We have learned from each other, taught each other, and supported each other in our efforts to lead this city. And I recognize that the mayor could have gone with any of us, and that Los Angeles would be well served. So, which only increases the pressure on me even more. Because I have a tremendous amount of work in front of me to live up to his expectations, the expectations of this council, as well as the police commission and the men and women of this department, and of course 4 million Angelinos. But I think I'm well prepared for that. I'm well prepared because first I recognize just how much I need to continue to listen and continue to garner the insight and the ideas of both people within LAPD as well as within the city, including the city government. Building trust externally is one of my two primary functions. We are today in a very good position in Los Angeles, but we have more work to do, particularly in communities of color, to deepen our trust. For those communities and those individuals within those communities to look upon LAPD as a trusted ally, as a partner in the safety of Los Angeles, as part of our shared responsibility of improving the lives of everyone who lives, works, and visits here. Secondly, I'm committed to the rank and file and the command officers, the 13,000 men and women of Los Angeles Police Department who come to work each day in order to live their life of purpose, of meaning. And how do I work in support of them? Because it truly is the senior staff of this organization, having been one for 2 decades now, it is a function of us supporting them rather than them working for us. And I intend to be a chief that demonstrates that each day in both my actions and my words. Going forward, building that trust, I believe, as I've spoken with a number of you in my meetings, preparing for this position, that we need to work on some definite initiatives coming out of the gate. And I'm happy to say that that work is already in progress, and I look forward to the fruits of those labors coming quickly in the coming weeks and months as we deal with a definite increase in workload on our rank and file, demands for their time, and constricting their ability to truly work and engage the communities in which we serve. And when that happens, that worsens or lessens trust. So I need to build trust with them by getting them the resources necessary so they can do their job in a reasonable manner, but also give them time to engage in the community in a more productive manner, which is my first one of my first goals. So with that, I welcome questions and your concerns, and I'm ready to write.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm going to open it up first with Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, well, I really, in terms of questions, I know you and I have discussed previously some of the priorities as it relates to my district, and I think it's really important to reflect and acknowledge that Chirla was here to speak in support. I know your history at Rampart Division in particular, I think, gave me greater comfort with some of the work that lies ahead, particularly now given some of the struggles that we're facing from our federal government. I think it's really important that this department continues to engender the trust of individuals regardless of their socioeconomic conditions, regardless of their ethnicity. And what I'm happy to see is that there is this convening of community organizations and individuals from a diversity of backgrounds that recognize your history of service in this department, your ascendance through your good work. And for me personally, I'm looking forward to the opportunity to work with you to help continue to improve the great strides that this department has made, much of which your leadership has been a part of. And again, I know it was a very difficult decision in kind of whittling down. The process was quite cumbersome, but it was good. It was a really healthy conversation around identifying the right leadership, and I think your breadth of experience in this department really affords us the continuing momentum that this department and this city deserves. So I have no questions. I think all my questions about your leadership have been answered through our previous meetings and interactions, and so I'm just delighted to see your appointment here today.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Councilmember Buscaino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would say, colleagues, that this, and what I told the mayor, this is going to be the most critical decision that we will make, I would say, not only as a committee, but as a council. Law enforcement policing is one of the core functions of local government. And in preparing ourselves for this next decision, when we have to reflect on the leadership of Chief Beck and his commitment to the city and to the department, and also praising him for having the ability to garner and nourish leadership in the upper ranks. So when Mayor Garcetti made this recommendation, it's natural for you, Chief, to be the next in command. To earn that 4th star based on your skills, your knowledge, your ability to serve 35 plus years, overseeing operations, having the relationships with the police commanders at each station, and embracing community-based policing. Also your experience based on, the dark days in the police department. If you look at the Rampart scandal, being assigned to Rampart and embracing the reforms. And I truly believe that we are a better department because of that. So we have to ask ourselves, what are you going to do to make sure we don't take that step back, and ensure that we look at the model of policing today and how we incorporate community-based policing and that faith, trust, and confidence between the community and the police department. I like the fact what you just said is not only your 2 primary functions of building trust, but also ensuring that you are committed to the rank and file, the men and women, both sworn and civilian, who steer the ship of what we call policing in the city of Los Angeles. The fact that you've also embraced technology and being more forward-thinking police manager that we've seen throughout the country is something that I support, and has prepared yourself for being the next chief of police. Community safety partnership, and like what Ms. Rodriguez indicated, that you've done a great job in really building the relationships with the council members. You're no stranger to this committee. You've been here, you're active, engaged, and vocal on key issues that's facing our city as it relates to policing. Community safety partnership has been a huge success for us. I know myself and Marquise Harris Dawson is looking at finding ways to go citywide. I know it's a resource issue, but we know it works. It truly works. It was born in Watts, and if you look at the relationship now at our public housing sites, we've seen a reduction of violent crime. I want to hear your thoughts on plans for this program, how you embrace the youth cadet program, how you foster transparency with the department, and how do you, and the last question, how do you stand out? How are you different than Chief Beck? So, then also, if you could speak on your long and short-term goals moving forward.
Okay, well, Couple items on there. Let me start from the top and work my way through your list. First of all, how to ensure we don't take a step back. I am an individual that has seen our darkest days. I remember as a young recruit listening to a briefing on the Hollywood burglar scandal, in which police officers working the night watch, the graveyard shift, became burglars themselves with appliance stores and various stores, retail stores that had burglar alarms going off, and they were assigned a burglary car, and they went rogue, and they began collecting loot and taking advantage of our citizenry. That incident had similar parallels some 15 years later when the Rampart scandal broke, and we saw the actions of Rafael Perez and the criminal actions of him and others, and their willingness to tarnish the badge and to prey upon the very people we were sworn to protect. In the aftermath of that, with the Board of Inquiry that was conducted by the department, the consent decree that we entered and successfully completed, demonstrating our transformation, was the importance of first-line supervision. First-line supervision in Hollywood during the burglary scandal was non-existent. First-line supervision in the Rampart scandal failed. First-line supervision is an area, as well as keeping the hearts and minds of our people attuned to their core values and focused. But the guardrail is frankly the sergeant. The guardrail is the senior partner. The guardrail is the watch commander. And systems and controls can help. But as I move forward, I see the importance of ensuring that our sergeants, our lieutenants, our captains have the sufficient staffing, that they have the leadership and the development and awareness of their critical role and importance in understanding that our officers will make mistakes, and those mistakes we need to fix. We need to own them. The power of an apology is important, but also the power in the sense of moving through that to understand, how did I make a mistake? But the issues of Hollywood and Rampart weren't mistakes. They were mistakes that weren't attended to, and when they weren't attended to, they grew into be evil. And I think that's where we need an organization that is not an error of gotcha. I learned that very clearly from Bill Bratton. We need to call out errors as they occur and retrain and encourage our people to stay proficient and follow the rules. And we need to control and provide guidance and correction when they make mistakes. And we have to be ever mindful that there are those within the organization, few, thankfully, but on occasion that will be willing to break those lines. And when that happens, we need to have transparency, we need to have accountability, and we need to own it. We need to step up, and we need to call it for what it is. I am convinced there is not a member of this organization today or in our past that looks at the evils I've described and with a forgiving eye. There are 209 men and women that we have lost who have sacrificed their life to this department, to this city. And we stand in honor of their sacrifice when we ourselves follow our core values. So that's the chief I am. That's the chief I'll be going forward. Moving through the other matters, when you do that, and we do it in a manner that is productive, that's encouraging, that encourages and champions our people's best work, we build their trust and we build the community's trust. So I'm confident that that aspect of our operation is a natural. It's within my sphere of experience, and as well as my senior management team. We very much still remember, as Chief Beck would say, the ghosts of our past, as you do, as both men, as reserves, and our experience with us do. Yep. Moving through this, talking about the plans for our community engagement and building of the trust. I do believe it's improved the more we are at a neighborhood level specific engagement. So the Community Safety Partnership is such an example, as are footbeats, as are bicycle patrols. Anytime a strategy beyond getting us, anything that can get us out of a black and white, responding to a radio call, that has an engagement where officers and people in the community talk back and forth to each other and see each other as human beings, improves that trust and also improves the appreciation of what our jobs are and the difficulties that we face. Community safety partnership is something I fully embrace and support. We have found in the last 2 years means of expanding it, and I intend to continue that as chief with the generosity of the Balmer Foundation. We're moving into South Park, as you know, by the end of this year with the opening of that revitalized park. And we're currently looking for a site selection for the San Fernando Valley. It is time for us to move from South Los Angeles with a model that is so successful, and as Ramona Gardens has also demonstrated, to the other parts of the city which have similar needs and will benefit from this type of expansion. As to the cadet program, I am grateful as a chief, as a member of this organization, for the Ray Charles Foundation and their continued support, as well as the USC and the leadership they've shown in affording us their resources to support this program and its expansion these last 5 years. I believe one of the legacy issues for Chief Beck will be the growth of that program, the expansion. And while we have had our mistakes, last year's shortcomings, we own that. We recognize that in that expansion, we made mistakes, and unfortunately, a member of this organization violated a sacred trust, and he is rightfully being criminally prosecuted for that. But we also, it took us a moment, but we ensured and redoubled our efforts to ensure that program is administered appropriately and has the right supervision. I'm committed to its continuation, but I'm particularly committed to expanding our representation with African American young men and women. That is an area of our representation that I believe we should and must see improvements. So I am looking, as part of our efforts in our community engagement. My wife and I were with the mayor on Sunday at Homer Methodist Church, and we were, and I continue and will continue to see our engagement in communities of color to encourage those communities to step up. That as they wish to change the Los Angeles Police Department, and we wish to change, for them to have memberships within their community come and be a part of us. And I think the cadet program is a wonderful door, if you will. Sure. Now, lastly, what is different about me than Chief Beck? Probably about 8 years. It's his birthday today, so mine's next Monday. So we got a couple differences. But each of us are individuals. We have much more in common than we do apart. I talk much faster than he does. I'm trying to learn to slow down. But I think our hearts are genuinely in the same place, and that is to the people of Los Angeles and the men and women of our organization. What will be different about me is I've heard clearly from this committee as well as from the council to be more present with both committees here as well as the full council, to be a more visible partner with you and with all of the leadership, the kitchen cabinet, if you will, of the mayor, with the other general managers. I believe Chief Beck has done a tremendous job, but I clearly heard the perception, the sentiment, and I intend to address that head on.
Fantastic. And if I can, Mr. Chair, we talk about reducing the which is our main vision of the police department is reducing the incident and fear of crime. As it relates to our constituents, residents are demanding better police service, calls for service in a timely manner. Myself and Mr. Bond, and as you know, and you presented before this committee, the importance of rethinking, relooking at our patrol plan in the city of Los Angeles and how it relates to, again, being more visible and active for our patrol officers, which is the key function of policing. Can you just share with us your commitment moving forward on that plan?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm grateful to this committee and to the full council for your support on the basic car reevaluation. That RFP is currently in process, and I look forward to the first analysis in more than 30 years of the basic manner in which we deploy resources in our geographic areas in the pursuit of community policing. The 168 basic cars designed in the 80s, when this city was more than 1 million people smaller, and certainly much different in its design. I think that is the first thing to do, is to strategically take a time out and look and see, how does that model withstand the demands of today? A time now where so much more news and every technology is so much quicker than 30 years ago when a beeper was the highest point of technology existence. Right. So I believe the core tenets of what we do remain: territorial imperative, police working with community, us being the most visible form of government. Sir Robert Peel, nearly 200 years, those principles are still the same. But the application of the algorithm of how many basic cars, the construction of those the staffing for that, I think that study has a great potential to show us where we're at today and potentially where we could be with some redesign, and it could mean need for added resources. However, I'm also very mindful that we've just completed a budget process, that there are heavy demands of this city to meet the needs of public safety and city government, and scant resources. And we have huge demands on our public to provide for those resources. So as a department, I need to live within my means. And as a department, with those demands that you've just described, my current strategy is to do what we've done in operations and the chief has done for the last 2 years, which is to try to look in every cupboard, look in every nook and cranny of the organization, how we operate, some 13,000 of us, and identify resources that can be pulled back into the geographic areas, and understanding the impact that those shifts will cause. I'm proud of the effort under the guidance and encouragement of this council for us to downsize our desk operations. And while we have reduced in 16 stations desk operations from 11 at night till 7 in the morning, we've maintained a visibility and a presence in all of those communities around the city. So we struck, I believe, a unique balance. And we put nearly 50 more officers on the field back in the streets because of that. Those type of efficiencies is what we still have in front of us and need to do. There's two strategies with that today that I have. One is that we've initiated a series of working groups to identify further gains, further changes in the manner in which we do work, what constitutes work, what are the activities we're engaged in, and who does that. Should there be some things we stop? As an example, we take we take traffic collision investigations of collisions not resulting in injury, but involving a piece of city property. Could be a traffic sign. It could be a no parking sign. Does that make sense today for a Los Angeles police officer to be engaged in a report that could take us an hour to complete with all the requirements today for something that may result in little more than a statistic? Or should that be shifted if there is a true need for that minor occasion from a liability risk management standpoint? Is that as a Los Angeles police officer, a sworn member of this organization, the best fit for that? I want to look at each of those types of practices. And I'm not the idea man here. What I'm looking for is the rank and file and the grassroots effort of people doing every day things that we've been doing for decades. And to say, why are we doing this? And it's an opportunity that I saw with Chief Bratton when he came on in 2002. He put such working groups together. I was part of I was the chair of the detective reengineering group, and we made good strides because he had to live, similarly to me, with an organization that wasn't going to grow immediately. Lastly, in addition to working groups, and we will be also doing a survey starting next week with every member of the organization that we'll put right back out in front of the membership. But lastly, I've also asked for, I'll say, a very stiff requirement. And that is for us currently going through an exercise to identify 200 additional personnel that will come from areas outside of operations back to operations. That is an effort to continue to bolster our geographic areas because at the end of the day, our geographic areas is where we have to pay first. That's the first bill, if you will, by demands that we have to meet. Mm-hmm. And there's just not enough to do everything this department attempts to do and everything that's asked of us. So in the coming months, I will be in communication. This will not come as a surprise to this committee or to the council as to where we look to realign and what things we are considering curtailing, or shifting the work so that we can focus on our core mission, which is public safety, and that is a person in a black and white and detectives in our area stations.
I appreciate that. That's one concern that our constituents have, our residents have, is when they call 911, they want to see the response of our police officer. I see Najee Ali, one of my newest constituents who are here. Thanks, Najee Ali, for joining us. And I see him, I see his advocacy, specifically in South Los Angeles communities as it relates to gang intervention, prevention. I know something that you've embraced throughout your career. We have gang interventionists who are working hand in hand, a national model to follow. I believe that police commanders today are picking up the phone on gang homicides and have that relationship. I know the answer. You should continue to support the efforts in our gang intervention prevention efforts.
I'm proud of the work that was started actually in the San Fernando Valley in the 90s. I'm proud of then Mayor Villaraigosa and his initiation of the Gang Reduction Youth Development, the continuation and the amplification that Mayor Garcetti has engaged in, and this committee and the full council support of those grid providers. They are critical to keeping the safety of Los Angeles. We have seen continued reductions in gang violence. However, last year, 284 people were killed in the city, and over 180 of them were related to gang violence. So we have still much work to do there, and I'm committed to seeing the continued support and continued evolution of that important resource.
And you don't have to answer this now, but I've always felt that how we're different than NYPD is one city, one police department, something that moving through the LAPD for 15 years, I often ask myself that. Why isn't DOT, animal services all under one umbrella? Give me your thoughts on that. I know it's a heavy...
Actually, why don't we bring that back for another discussion for another time?
I like to get some insight on that as we move forward in your leadership. Mr. Chair, I appreciate your leadership. I did not have a seat at that table when you were asked by the mayor to interview this selection here. So I know I took a lot of time, but it was important for me to. I really appreciate. Listen, skills, knowledge, abilities. This is what we've learned in the LAPD SKA. So Chief Moore, I believe you have the skills, the knowledge, ability to lead this agency forward, and I support this recommendation.
Excellent. Thank you. I want to turn it over to Mr. Rue. I just wanted to make one comment, and then I'll jump back in and close it with several comments. But one of the things you talked about were efficiencies and what we're looking at, not just in officers doing paperwork instead of patrol work, but also out in the field and what kind of stops we're doing. I think the new AFDR policy is really going to be a game changer. And that's a discussion, it's probably one of the first discussions I'd like to have with the department is, what does that all mean? It wasn't our doing.
Well, Councilman, if I could, just for the audience who may not know what AFDR is, this is an expansion of the data capturing, or the department has engaged in the recording of stop information. We conducted a detention. We searched an individual of the perceived gender and ethnicity and the outcome of that activity. And as a means of an effort to study the impact of our policing and whether it's disparate and potentially unconstitutional relative to communities of color. So in the state of California, a law was passed that took effect here where the department...
AB 953 for those who want to look it up.
And now we are we began piloting the collection, modeling it this last week, and July 1st we'll be formally collecting that information on not just our stops, but every radio call in which we engage in, every follow-up, including a search warrant by a detective in which people are asked to leave a house. And we expect, and a significant expansion of the amount of information captured on each of those activities. Previously, we would capture less than 10 points of information. Now we're going to capture in excess of 40 points of information, and going from hundreds of thousands of those recordings to over 1 million, perhaps in excess of 1.6 million. So its impact on law enforcement is being felt, it's being anticipated throughout the state, and I welcome the opportunity to come back and have the department come back and describe to you the impact on workload. It will increase workload. It's going to increase the amount of discretionary time our people have, and it's another reason that I've identified the urgent need for us to realign further resources back to the geographic areas. And as a summary, in 2 years, the last year and a half, 2 years, we've moved and realigned functions amounting to 350 police officers back to the geographic areas. Downsizing operations, eliminating some operations, and realigning resources that were specialized out to geographic areas. But it's not enough. And that's why this next 200. Now, we will, in the next 6 months, accomplish that. We have work yet to be done. I need to sit down with our league, our bargaining unit, and explain not just this rationale, but talk about the impacted personnel that will be involved in this.
Oh, thanks for that. So we'll have a deeper discussion once we implement after July, maybe towards the end of the summer, and what we're doing on the AFDRs, and because that's going to be a deeper discussion. Yes. So, Councilmember Wu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, Chief. It's good to see you, and again, congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, I know once Chief Moore gets to council, every member is going to want to speak, so I'm going to try to use this committee time to exhaust all my questions and comments, but I will try to keep them as short as possible, unlike my previous colleague.
That was great.
No, but,
Wow.
Take my lead, David.
But Chief, this was a very robust process. And, you were selected from 31 candidates because of your experience and your depth of knowledge. I mean, you've risen through the ranks. You were a police officer, a detective, a sergeant, lieutenant. You worked patrols, investigations, administrative assignments throughout the city. Quite frankly, you are the LAPD. And your experience and position makes you extremely qualified to represent the LAPD and the thousands of men and women who have sworn to protect and to serve. Your work as and you just elaborated them here today, the LAPD's initiatives to reevaluate the basic car studies, expand and improve community policing. You just went in depth about reorganizations to augment operations, field operations, to get more officers on patrol are exactly what Council District 4 has been calling for. And as the council member of Council District 4, I'm thrilled to see all these new initiatives that I've been working so hard to be reflected in our new police chief. In our newly appointed police chief. But in addition to being a proud Angelino, I am one of 2 immigrants on the city council. And millions of immigrants in our city face a very different challenge and often have a different relationship with law enforcement. The fear of a knock on the door or being stopped at work, the store, or even dropping off your kids has created new challenges for the LAPD and has done harm to LAPD's relationships, especially in immigrant communities. Detention centers are being built to intern migrant children and families, and worse yet, separating children from families. This has come as a serious shock, and who knows what's next. Here in the city of Los Angeles, a city of sanctuary, we must show that to protect and to serve is not to intimidate and divide. That diversity is not the enemy of safety. And here in the City of Angels, we protect all our residents regardless of status. And I know you're incredibly supportive of Special Order 40, and I'm very grateful for that. And perhaps here more than anywhere else, we need to consider ways to better protect immigrants and reaffirm their trust in the LAPD so we can make all of our communities safer. So with that, you answered so many other questions. I just have 2 main questions. Mm-hmm. Special Order 40, it's been a guiding document for LAPD for decades. And in your mind, given that the federal government in 2016 has literally had an about face, how's Special Order 40 faring, and is there anything else or anything more that the LAPD could do to support either Special Order 40 or just basically to protect and serve our immigrant communities?
So thank you, Councilman. And as a son of an immigrant, but just also as an Angelino, made up of a city of 4 million people that so many come from so many different places of this world, and part of a country that was based on people fleeing a tyranny and coming to a place where they could express their religious freedoms, their rights as an individual versus some state control. I'm proud as an American, I'm proud as an Angelino, I'm proud as a police chief to ensure that our actions as a department remain state-of-the-art, that they remain demonstrative of our core values. I made this remark the other day on a newscast when asked about Special Order 40, and that is, I believe that matters of immigration affairs is best left to the federal government. In fact, it is left to the federal government, as are other responsibilities that the federal government enjoys or is placed with them, and that local policing, public safety is my matter, is a matter for the Los Angeles Police Department. And I'm not going to mess those things up. We are going to continue with the recognition that the rights of all people in Los Angeles, regardless of their immigration status, are to be protected. The dignity of all individuals is to be protected and ensured. Our outreach and engagement will continue. I'm proud of the diversity that our organization itself represents. I believe that's a tool. It's an effective means of communicating the very things I'm talking about. We are a department that no longer has, that is a majority of minorities, if you will. And many of our members are first generation. Many have immigrated this country themselves, and many others have third, fourth, fifth generations within their family. But regardless of whether they're just arriving in Los Angeles as a young person and now as a member of our organization, or their lineage goes back decades, I'm convinced that all of them have come up through an organization that has demonstrated a sensitivity to this and an awareness and a valor that we will protect this. As an individual within the organization, Chief Beck entrusted me with the revision of our impound policies, working with City Attorney Deborah Gonzalez and others, so that the draconian means of which we impounded cars then from people who were unlicensed and held those cars for 30 days, many times resulting in the loss of those vehicles because people could not be licensed. They couldn't be simply because of their undocumented status. We revised that, and we did so lawfully. We were challenged a great deal, even at the time, by members of our union as to the legality of that. We were challenged by prosecutors that said that we were breaking the law. But with the guidance of the city attorney's office and support of this council, and we knew that the right path was to demonstrate the compassion and to demonstrate that while we are a country of laws, that we need to make sure those laws are not punitive just for some idea. So we changed those, and we continued that with the immigration detainers. And at a point back in time, 2012, 2013, in which everyone else in law enforcement were honoring those detainers in basically a bailless manner of holding someone for something as minor as a misdemeanor offense, that what we believed was not only unlawful but was unconstitutional. And as a representative for Chief Beck, I spoke both at the state level as well as with federal officials, including the head of DHS and the head of ICE at the time, and stressed the need for them to revise their practices because of the belief that we saw this as unconstitutional and unwarranted and imbalanced. I'm proud to say that I believe that our leadership in Los Angeles encouraged the state to enact the Trust Act and to follow with reforms that were started here. I'm also very proud that in both those efforts, and more recently with revisiting Special Order 40 and further deepening it and protecting to ensure that its tenets were updated to reflect common terminology today versus the archaic references of the 70s. But it also changed some material actions of what our officers did interacting with an individual. I'm specifically referencing the gathering of information such as the place of birth that was unnecessary and further eroded confidence of why were we collecting that information. That I'm confident that those efforts demonstrate the result. But I'm really encouraged is that at the table with us were organizations from throughout the city and throughout the advocates of immigrant populations throughout this region, that we shared the responsibility for these reforms. And I think that going forward, that's where the strength of the city lies, is that we continue to share and talk and find ways to improve the safety of everyone in this city.
Thank you for that, Chief, and thank you for stating that you're a child of immigrants, because we're all children of immigrants here in this nation. And one last question: homelessness. We may eventually see some changes by the way of 5611, how it's enforced. And after the immense efforts by our own City Council and the County Board of Supervisors, we may very well see an expanded definition of grave disability coming out of Sacramento in the coming months, helping with the 5150 holds. And while this may give the city greater flexibility in helping some of our most vulnerable residents, it could also mean more resource requirements. Do you have any thoughts, ideas, or rather, would you be willing to look into how we can better serve our city's homeless residents without necessarily infringing on their rights and liberties?
Oh, absolutely. To the latter point, homelessness is the humanitarian crisis of our generation, without question, and not just here in Los Angeles, but in this region and in many parts of the country. And as the chief of this department, I will continue what Chief Beck has done and what I have done as over operations, and that is to recognize that this is not a police problem that the police will solve. This is a shared responsibility of all of us, of public and private, of philanthropic, of our faith leaders, of all communities, to lean into, to find the will and the resources to provide people who last night lived in conditions that no American should be caused to live in. There's many facets of homelessness. To describe homelessness as one person or one item is such a disservice. It's a Rubik's Cube of complexity. And I think that the solutions are similar, that it needs to be one that we are at the table with others, other bright minds, other resources, other philosophies that bring together a balanced approach. Today, as I look at Los Angeles, I'm proud of our engagement because we are, I believe, striking a balance. There are critics. I spoke just yesterday with a homeless advocate that wants to have, that frankly was wanting to have further conversations, which we're going to engage in. So I believe many of even our critics recognize that the department is making efforts to not over-police or to see policing as the solution. However, I'm also reminded that last year 29 individuals who are experiencing homelessness were killed, were murdered. The year before, it was less than half of that. That speaks to the level of violence that people experiencing homelessness in that state of crisis are being victimized. And many times the instances in which that violence is being committed by others who are also homeless. So our engagement with the populations that make up that group, if you will, needs to continue to have an enforcement posture. There are times when it's appropriate when people are committing violence on another, when people are stealing or committing thefts and other types of crime, that we act. However, and I'm encouraged by the mayor's leadership in this council, that the primary thing that we need to do while we're taking that enforcement action, while we're trying to safeguard this very vulnerable population. Last year, more than 800 people died in LA County homeless. That's untenable. But while we're providing that public safety, I'm encouraged by the efforts to expand outreach, to expand supportive services, to get supportive housing, bridge housing, and to find a means to begin to exit this terrible situation we're in. I'm encouraged by the reduction, while only 5% of this last year in the homeless population count, but we had more than 8,000 people last night who slept in a vehicle. And so we've got to expand significantly on an emergency basis, safe off-street parking, bridge housing, shelters that allow people the dignity and the important resource of shelter. And I'm committed to that, to use my position as a bully pulpit to call out other agencies and private and public that should be stepping up. Because last morning at 3 a.m., I know I had hundreds of Los Angeles police officers and firefighters working the streets of Los Angeles, interacting with the population that I've just described. There are other people at the table of solutions for this that were not there, and I need them there. I need those resources there. and that will help us. So it's a balance. Lastly, this gravely disabled aspect. There are a significant number of people who are experiencing homelessness who have significant mental health issues in a state of crisis. And our current laws relative to the interpretation of gravely disabled and whether or not we have the ability to, against their will, seek resources to help them understand the dangerous position they're in, that they could lose their life unless they get medical treatment and they get out of the circumstance they're in. I think it's time for a change. I think it is time to thoughtfully reconsider and define, while being mindful that the civil liberties of us as Americans is our most valued treasure. So touching that by this adjustment to gravely disabled needs to be thoughtful, but we also need to be bold when we recognize how many people today are dying of exposure.
Thank you, Chief Moore. And I just got 5 more questions. No, I'm just kidding.
And I apologize.
Mr. Chair.
We're here all day. I apologize to the chair and the group. I know these responses are a bit lengthy, but I think these are complex issues. And in fairness, I want to make sure that I give you a map of what kind of thinking that the department has.
No, Chief, and no, thank you for those very, very thorough answers, because I know when we spoke before and when you were also a candidate, you gave in-depth. I mean, this is why I'm saying you are the LAPD. You are with the most experience and know-how, because every answer you give is so thoughtful and thought of in so many different ways. It's very appreciated, because it's not just an answer you just want to give. You've actually put tremendous hours and years of thought into this, so it's greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. And also remind you that this is an appointment confirmation hearing. And so the length of which, the detail in which you're giving is incredibly appropriate. And in fact, I wish we could do this all day. And so I do look forward to future.
I'm grateful that we don't have all day.
Well, if Joe were here and he had a say in leading this meeting. I want to close with this, since not only did I have the fortunate opportunity to ride shotgun through this whole process, and had so many conversations, literally well over a dozen conversations with the mayor directly, and meeting with him often, and late night phone calls through this process, but with each one of the candidates as well. And taking a step back from that, Chief Moore, I've known you not only as a Los Angeles police officer, but as a friend, you and your family, and your wife and your daughter. And I've had the opportunity not only to develop personally that relationship with you, but to learn the kind of person you are. Because a lot of people see, when they speak with you, the depth of knowledge and history and passion and compassion you have for the men and women, not only of the department, but of all Angelenos. It's unparalleled. I mean, we could have done a global search, and we would have never found one individual, even within our own ranks, that has that depth and passion at the same time, coupled with ethics and honesty. And I say that not just as the officer you are, but as the person you are. So I'm excited at this opportunity. I know that the department, under so many leadership roles that you've had, has done a lot. And now with this fourth star, how much more we could do. And I say that with no pun. But with that, I look at this as not the most important decision before this committee, not the most important decision before the council, but by far the most important confirmation we could make in our political lifetime, as while we're on the council, of any commissioner, general manager. This is by far the most important. And to have an opportunity to have you before us during this process is a great one. But the friendship has always been there, the openness, the dialogue. When you open with the idea that the accessibility of conversation, to me that is very, very important as the chair of this committee, as we've discussed. And your openness to further the relationship professionally with the council is critically important. I personally feel that the police of the chief of police for the city of Los Angeles does not work for the mayor. The chief of police for Los Angeles does not work for the city council or the police commission. The chief of police does not work for the rank and file or the union. The chief of police for Los Angeles works for the people and all people in Los Angeles, period. And I'm passionate about that as we've had conversations. And, but you work with all of those other constituencies equally. The policy-making arm of the department being the commission, the executive branch, and the mayor, the legislative branch, and the administrative function of the city being the council. And those are really important. They all have incredible weight and influence and need to be heard equally, right? And so I really appreciate the dialogues that we've had through that. With this vote, I would like to ask for a roll call vote because it's not often that we, maybe it's every 8 to 10 years, if that, get to vote on.
Let's hope.
Let's hope. A chief of police. So if, Mr. Clerk, if you could go ahead and have a roll call vote on this item.
Councilmember Mitchell Englander?
Aye.
Councilmember Councilmember Mitch O'Farrell's not here. Councilmember Joe Buscaino?
Aye.
Councilmember David Rue?
Aye.
And Councilmember Monica Rodriguez?
Aye.
Chief, congratulations. You are confirmed by this committee, and we appreciate it. We'll see you downstairs for the official city council vote in just a few moments.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have one more item, and it's an important one.
I think we should institutionalize you.
We're going to go ahead and take item 2. I'm sorry, item 3.
Item number 3 is the city administrative report relative to various actions regarding a Los Angeles Fire Department helicopter purchase and Municipal Improvement Corporation of Los Angeles Financing Authority.
If we can ask voices to keep it down, please, as your way out. We still have this committee still in session. Thank you so much.
For the 6th Street Viaduct project included in the 18-19 adopted budget, also referred to the Budget and Finance Committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Augusto Gutierrez with the Office of the CAO. The report before this committee provides recommendations to fit one fire helicopter of not to exceed $18.3 million to the MICLA budget list without exceeding the MICLA commercial paper capacity of $193 million. Also provided in this report is an update on the fire helicopter price negotiations, on the MICLA CP program, and on the non-voter approved debt ceiling, as was requested by the Budget and Finance Committee during budget deliberations. So our office performed an analysis of the 2018-19 MICLA projects and identified an opportunity to add the fire helicopter without significantly changing the MICLA project list. And this was through the 6th Street Viaduct project, which was budgeted at $28.14 million. So this project only requires $10 million in 2018-19, with the remaining in 19-20. So our office recommends that only $10 million be reauthorized, as is the council's policy to reauthorize MICLA projects before expenditures, and reconsider the other $18 million next fiscal year. And so this recommendation effectively adds a fire helicopter without exceeding the CP capacity.
Okay. Do we have questions from my colleagues? Okay, I have a few questions for the department. We have representatives from the department here. Before we open it up for specific questions on the helicopter that's before us, colleagues, and looking at our needs, we know full well that fire season, there's no such thing anymore in the state of California. Fire season's gone. Fire season is every day throughout the year, and we know that for a fact. And I won't get into all the issues of climate change and how it's affecting us. You don't have to. If you want to figure that out, just turn on the news, and you'll see fires flaring up throughout California constantly. We have to make significant investments in our fire resources without question. One of the most important pieces of equipment is our helicopter, firefighting helicopters. And when we already know from the mechanical issues we've had and how often they're flying, we need more. And so I'm not here to debate or question, in fact, support the acquisition of this helicopter without question. I was going to go through where does it take us operationally, availability of our 3+1s, and that's not really why we're here, because we're here to support it, and I want to support it. I do have some questions about snorkel gear on the helicopter. Does it have that functionality as many other municipal fleet are now having to augment and change their existing fleet so they can go into drop barrels and pools, ponds, et cetera? And so I don't know if this new helicopter has that. So I wanted to hear about that. But I specifically wanted to mention and bring up one thing that, quite frankly, I believe would irritate the entire body before us. And that is that this came at a moment's notice at the last minute, at the 11th hour, with no discussion, no input. There was no strategic plan coming before us even a year ago, 6 months ago. This literally came at the last minute from the department. And we know what we need. We know what our needs are. And this should have been thought out way in advance, where we can look at strategically under financing best ways to achieve it. We had to move projects around to literally shoehorn it in at the last minute and defer other maintenance needs of the city because this was never programmed. The departments constantly do this, and particularly police and fire. And then they go on to negotiate personally with the vendors in the acquisition and the purchasing, which is also another big mistake. I, for one, as the chair of this committee, I've sent the message constantly, and I'm sending it again. The council is tired of it. It's got to stop. You've got to bring in our experts and work with the CAO's office day one. You've got to allow our experts to negotiate and work out financing. And we've got to have strategic plans for, particularly when we're talking about millions of dollars, if not tens of millions of dollars in acquisition for equipment, what it's going to take and get it on board to start looking at financial planning. It really puts us in a bind, and that's what happened in this case. And it happened, it happens frequently. So we need equipment and technology, advanced planning, communications and dialogue. This should have been brought up last time we sat before us talking about the mechanical issues and the fact that we're negotiating another helicopter. Then the vendor has us on a rail to have basically punitive fees, fines, and cost increases if we don't meet their objective for their quarterly earnings. It can't be vendor driven, and I can't say that enough. And so we need it. I'm all for it. I get it. But there's got to be something more up front. I've got to get the departments to trust our CAO's office. We have the best and the brightest working there. And every time I get an acquisition from a department and a purchase request that's already been negotiated, and I get the CAO to look at it, they're like, yeah, we've got to make some changes. That shouldn't happen. Should not happen. Could not happen. Cannot happen. There's a reason we have a phenomenal CAO's office. And the departments, quite frankly, this is not, we have great firefighters. We have the best in the world by far. We have the best equipment, the best training. There's some things they shouldn't be doing. and that's the finance and acquisition of equipment. And so I know I spent a lot of time on that. Walk me through just for a moment on two things. One, is this going to be operational the day we get it, or is it going to be another, are there modifications and trainings and flight testings that have to be done where it's going to be grounded for any period of time, or can we start flying it immediately? And then two, what about the latest technology advancements and added equipment like snorkel apparatus, and is that included or not?
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Battalion Chief Rick Combs, Section Commander from Air Operations, and we do appreciate you hearing us today, and we'd be more than happy to answer your questions. And the comments that you made specific to process are well taken, and we'll share that with our entire organization.
I appreciate it, yeah. And it's not on you. I mean, there's a lot of people behind you that have been part of this process. But
one team, sir.
Yeah. So.
Question number one, the delivery date of the helicopters is projected early spring of 19. Typically, when we take delivery of a helicopter, we'll fly back to the plant, inspect the helicopter, and then take a 3 or 4 day flight back to Air Operations. Upon the aircraft landing at Air Operations, GSD will come in and do a thorough inspection of the aircraft, which will typically take about 2 days. And then the next thing that we do is we change the aircraft identification or the tail number. So that process typically will take about 1 week or 5 working days. So to answer your question, it will not go into service upon arrival, typically looking at a 4 to 5 day process.
Right. Okay.
As far as equipment goes and technology, all of the Augusta 139 helicopters are equipped with the most up-to-date technology. Some of the helicopters within the fleet that are older are actually going in through retrofits and modifications right now to bring them up to the new technology that's available. So the new helicopter will have all of the available technology built into it. As far as additional equipment like snorkels, that does come as part of the equipment list associated with the spec sheet of the helicopter. We also have all of the latest and greatest in avionics that we'll leverage as well. So there's nothing on this helicopter that is not latest generation. The water tank is the latest generation. Again, the avionics, the radio packages that we're having built into the aircraft are all state of the art. And the interesting thing about the platform that we use with this helicopter fleet is that it's a Honeywell-based platform that we're able to continue to integrate and upgrade without replacing the whole system. So we've been able to take, for example, Fire 3 and Fire 5, which are our oldest helicopters in the fleet, and we're upgrading those helicopters with the newest radio technology. The goal is to...
We just approved that today.
Yeah, thank you for that. The goal is to always maintain these helicopters in a state where they're standardized, and what that does for our pilots is it reduces what we call head down time. So our goal is for a pilot to go into any one of the 4 existing helicopters and literally not know which helicopter they're in because the switchology, the radios, and the avionics are all identical. So it just leads to a safer operation, more efficiency.
Is switchology, is that an actual technical term? Or
that's an air operation.
Did you just come up with this? I think I saw some eyebrows go up. Yeah. Switchology. Yeah. Switchology.
We can reference it in a couple of reports, but yeah.
All right. That's all right. I appreciate that. I'm very interested in the switchology. So thank you for that. And and one last, well, 2 things. I want to make sure that we recapture mutual aid dollars for our helicopter fleet. And when I say that, I don't mean the mutual aid as it's defined under the state law or federal law. I mean the mutual aid where we have friendly aid, not just mutual aid as it's defined, but friendly aid. So when Burbank and Glendale, Santa Monica, all of our neighboring cities in Ventura County, often we will fly over there to help them out. And we do it a lot. And we should. But we don't charge them anything to do it because it didn't fall under mutual aid or they didn't declare an emergency and we should. there's an ability to do that, and we have to recapture those dollars. We have to recapture those dollars because we're in the millions on response for mutual response. And so I know there's a mechanism to do it. I know we've talked about doing it. I know during, I think, some of the recent fires, we've been able to do it. I want to make sure we have a practice of doing it because these are City of LA taxpayer dollars, and that's really important to do. So, so if you can make sure that you check in on that,
Yes,
and
sir.
that we've got those processes in place. And then the last thing is I really do want to hear back also on moving forward with acquisition, supplies, technology, equipment, and a better relationship with the CLA and the CAO's office, more transparency, more upfront, knowing, because these last minute large acquisitions throw a huge curveball in our financial equations, and they also take offline our most key personnel to stop everything they're doing for often weeks to renegotiate and figure out the nuances of warranties or policies and funding and replacing projects that are already online and funded. And we could avoid that. And perhaps not only avoid it, but save a lot of money and time and effort. And so I really want to emphasize that to the department. Okay?
Understood.
Appreciate that. With that, colleagues, we'll go ahead and approve this item with no objection. Then that'll be the order. Thank you very much. And
For your support.
I appreciate it. So that concludes this meeting, and we are adjourned.